Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend Jim Stam. How you doing, brother?
Dude, I'm good, man. I am basking in my wrongness about this pirate season, right? Like
Yeah,
I've never been more glad to be wrong, Gary. What say you?
I say lots of things, man. I mean, we're probably gonna go at it here for a good 45 minutes to an hour because how could you not? Exciting times, man. As we sit down to do this live stream, we're at 18-8 ball club. 10 games over 500. They haven't been this good since the end of 2015. Um, where do you start? We were definitely wrong, about a lot of things. I mean, we could wind up having our record predictions turn out, but even so, where they are right now, where do you begin, Jim? I mean, we were talking before we got on air here about like what ifs. Everybody likes to do that what if game.
Hmm.
You build up the record prediction. You go like, okay, now if the starting rotation does this, if the relievers can do this, if the hitters can hit this many home runs, if they can, you think about all those things, then you lose Cruz. It's like, oh my God, there went one of my biggest ifs. This is beyond that.
Yeah, maybe
Connor
one of
Joe's
the
doing more than I ever ifed him into. You get what I mean?
yeah, Cruz was probably like one of the more sure ifs. We were kind of ironically counting on that a little bit more, and he went out the window. So yeah, it's just crazy, man. Like contributions from everywhere.
Well, let's talk
Guys,
about how we were wrong. I mean, let's basically say like it's not just about the record; it's more about individuals.
yeah,
You were just talking about we were talking about Connor Joe, for instance. Neither of us thought he'd be doing this. We certainly didn't think he'd be demanding a starting role, but he pretty much has, right?
yeah.
Um, how did we miss that? If you look back at his numbers from Colorado, they weren't this, but they were good enough that we probably should have not put him like on a borderline to not make the club. I know
I
that's
prob
where
I probably dismissed him more than you, Gary. I just didn't see much there. Um, I thought any hitting that he was doing there might have been attributed a little bit to Coors Field. Not that he's not a good reserve, but he's just one of many guys that have just individually picked this team up at certain times when they've absolutely had to have it. I'm just, I mean, he's one of them. Sawinski looks
I'm at.
great.
Zelensky's taking walks
Yeah,
against lefties, if nothing else, and he's pounding righties. So, I mean, again, if you talk about those ifs that we walked in with, if Sawinski can, be real, and I think he's panning out. I think we're actually seeing that Jack Sawinski has evolved at least enough that he's not going to just be a strikeout machine against lefties. In fact, he's going to do damage to them by getting on base.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty.
I he's taking away the biggest question I think we had in the beginning of the season was is he's going to be relegated to maybe a platoon guy,
Yeah.
and now he's a guy that you really can't think about taking him out of the lineup unless you want to rest him. He's getting on base too much.
Yeah, and I want to start with this too. We're going to talk about a lot of things that Charrington's done right. I'm getting some comments here from Dave. Charrington's pretty much hit on all his moves. He's right. Um, his question is, how is Charrington getting it right? We talked last week a little bit. He's putting together pieces and they fit together beautifully, whether we saw it or not. And pulling all the right levers right now, I think with Even getting this Brian Reynolds deal done, it's one thing to get the deal done. He didn't overpay here.
No.
He did it. This is a tremendous deal for this team. A lot of people are not thinking about that. That takes Brian Reynolds really, really, really wanting to be here, but like, my goodness, it's hard to get on Ben Charrington right now. Everything that they brought in has worked, and what hasn't is injured, and we don't know if it would have worked.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think if you'd have said to people at the beginning of the year, like, hey, Cruz would be hurt, out for months, Choi would be out, Brubaker to Tommy John, Garcia can't pick up a baseball, and you just said pick their record through 26 games, a lot of people would say 8-18, not 18-8. I can guarantee you that much. So, but Sherrington, I mean, hey, credit to him, man. Everything has looked better than you could possibly have dreamed so far, Gary.
I mean, that's the other thing too. I think if they were like 12-12 right now or whatever, I think we'd probably be pretty excited. I mean, I think we'd probably sound almost as positive as we do right now.
Probably.
But to be where they are right now with a 10-game cushion on 500, and you're not even through April,
And 8 games up on the Cardinals.
and you were already where I thought a 500-ish team, like you were going to be in that argument at least this year. They've probably at least given themselves a heck of a shot at it, you know?
Yeah, it gives them some cushion to work with.
Yeah. But the energy in the town is something otherworldly right now. I'm seeing Pirates gear all over the place. I'm seeing people got Pirates decals on their cars around here now. There's
My neighbors want to talk to me about the Pirates.
brand new license. I had one of my neighbors literally just came over with a beer the other day. How about them Buccos? I'm like, yeah, I just got done talking about them for an hour, dude. So, yeah, it's kind of just a crazy thing. I didn't expect any of this year, and even if everything does go south, which I don't think it's gonna,
Well, you
gotta love
watched
this first month.
Yeah, and you watched this first series, or this series against the Dodgers, this last series. It wasn't fluky. Like, they looked like the better team. And that's kind of crazy to say. I mean, because when you look at the Dodgers, hey, they may not be as strong as they've been in the past few years. That's still a stacked lineup and a good rotation and a good pitching staff.
Very much so, and they were down a couple players like Max Muncy and Will Smith, and it's not they're not at the height of their powers, I would say.
Right.
But it's still the Dodgers, and they're still a tough team, and so
And they still have stars.
So was Houston, and honestly, the Reds can pitch. A lot of people want to just assume they're going to finish in the basement, but they can pitch, and the Cardinals can't. Boy, this division is interesting. It really could flip on its head in a matter of a season or two. Pretty nuts.
And this is a year where if somebody does jump out to a hot start and the division kind of flounders, you just never know what that could lead to. So I say it's okay for Pirate fans to be excited about the rest of the year. You just never know.
I think so too. And Jim, I think when we come back, let's answer some of the questions that have rolled in here.
Okay.
And then let's maybe start talking about why it may or may not be sustainable. Because it might be. I want to keep hedging my bet because I'm a Pirates fan. I'm trained to. But this might actually be a thing, people.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. the new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
So, we're back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports, and let's start with Shady here. Says, do you guys think Drew stays on the team? He's talking about Drew Maggi, and I figured this is a good opportunity to go ahead and talk about that situation too and how it played out. Obviously, they were able to get him the pinch hit in Wednesday night's game, and he finally got a start here on Thursday, which was a little controversial, at least in my eyes. But ultimately, they got the win that didn't matter. Do I think he stays? No. I think he'll probably get shipped out. In fact, I bet he's on a different plane than the rest of the team tonight.
I would
And
agree
I would
with
think
that.
Miguel Andujar will probably be the most logical call up, believe it or not. And I think it's basically because they're not using that 26 spot. So just bring up a right-handed bat and sit him there. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what I think.
yeah. Look, the Maggi thing, the pinch hit he got was great, and should he have been in the lineup today? I don't know. We've seen a lot of guys in Pirate lineups over the years that probably shouldn't have been there. I won't make too big of a deal out of that. I don't think you're going to see him pass today. And I think Andujar is a guy that probably deserves to come back up and get a shot. So I think that that's a good move, and I think that he's better suited for that than a lot of these other guys. CSN, he's just sitting there too much. Guy needs at bats. He needs reps.
Yeah,
And
I can't
Maggi,
see it. I can't see calling him back up to fill that spot.
I wouldn't if that's what you're going to do with him.
No,
It's
they
not fair.
especially
It's
when
not
the
fair
coach,
to him.
especially when the coach said it was to get him at bats. So it's not like they're going to bring him right back up into the same situation he was in.
Yeah.
As soon as Jack kind of took hold and became like the everyday guy, there wasn't going to be any subbing in for him against righties. And Connor Joe's made himself indispensable too. You can't really take him out of the lineup.
Not until he reverts back, if
Right.
he does.
If he does. So yeah, Andujar to me is a guy you're already paying him over $1 million because you made a deal with them to avoid arbitration, and
I don't think the
why
Pirates
pay him
thought
$1 million to play in AAA?
Yeah, I think the Pirates thought there'd be more at bats to go around. So they
I
could be
think
wrong.
they did too.
Yeah,
I
they
totally
could be
think they
wrong
did.
too. We'll include them in our wrongness podcast here. So
Yeah.
I think they just envisioned there being more at bats to go around, and sometimes you just need veterans for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Andujar's he'd been swinging the bat really well there for a while, and he's probably better suited for that. It wouldn't shock me at all if he came up and got a few important hits for them.
Yeah,
also.
the only thing it really can't be is another middle infielder. They got to have somebody that can at least pretend to fill in the corner outfield and
Right.
at least pretend to play first base or DH or something like that. He makes the most sense to me. That's who I assume they would probably bring up, and I would imagine that would be pretty soon. I think the feel good thing with Maggi, it only goes so far,
Sure.
He had a 500 OPS in AA this year, so
Yeah, I mean, look, I was teary eyed on Wednesday night for the guy.
Same.
God, I can't even imagine chasing that dream for that long and thinking you're never gonna get it. But yes, that stuff doesn't last forever, and got to get back to winning ball games.
Yeah, and I think they have been doing that. They've been tiptoeing through some raindrops to get that done. I think nothing has carried them more than the starting pitching, though, Jim. And that's where we have to start with: is this sustainable? Because the stretch that this starting pitching is on right now is borderline historic at this point. I don't see that as anywhere close to sustainable. But are they, as a 5-man unit, able to give you a good outing more often than not? It's starting to really look that way, isn't it?
Yeah, well, what I like, Gary, is like what I what I what I imagine is happening within that pitching staff is guys now kind of see it as a challenge to get that 6 innings, to get that 6 innings of a quality start, and that's kind of the expectation that they now have amongst one another. Like that's an
Yeah.
important thing when they go out there. They want to be the next guy to be able to do that.
There's real
Um,
disappointment when they don't,
yes, you can
you know?
see it, and you can feel that that is the standard that they want to set, and it's a high standard because in baseball nobody's doing that to this degree. Um,
I would agree with you.
is it necessarily sustainable? No, nobody's going to keep doing this all year for quality starts. But it doesn't mean that they have to fall off a cliff with it either.
No, it does not. No, it does not. And I think that's kind of where I'm going with it is I still think they have an ace in the hole. I think Ortiz is first of all, new scouting reports are out about the changeup, Jim. We kept talking about needing that changeup to come along.
Mm-hmm.
Changeup has life to it. Changeup has shape to it. The changeup looks like something that he's gotten his arms around. You combine that with everything else he's doing in the fastball command, good chance he's legitimately ready. Now it's basically they don't need him.
Not right now, they don't.
Well, no, no, no. They don't need him right this second. Is my point.
But
So I
that's a
mean,
nice guy to be able to pull from when we talk about this regression that you're likely to see somewhere
yeah, yeah,
along the
yeah.
line.
But that's what I'm saying. I take him now, and I throw him, Jim, into my mythological sustainability bucket here that we're building. You know, we're saying, okay, I think we've got a legitimate starting pitcher that probably is better than two of the guys I have right now long term. I can bring him up if either of them falter or if there's an injury to somebody. I've got this in my back pocket. You know, we already dealt with JT going down. We've got room for one more, is the way I'm looking at it. So I put that in the sustainability bucket, and that ups my level of how real I think this is, with
Yeah.
the rotation at least.
Well, and I look at the two main guys to me are Oviedo and Velasquez because they've taken such nice steps forward. Um, is it realistic to expect them both to maintain that all year without maybe some more peaks and valleys? I would expect that a little bit. I think we know what Rich Hill is. I think we know what Mitch Keller is. I think we even kind of know what Rowanzi is. It's those two guys that I look at and think, okay, so if one of them does start to falter or they hit rough patches, you do have guys like Ortiz to pull from. And so
Yeah,
maybe it's not as precarious as we are even trying to tell ourselves now that it may be. Now
right.
injuries would change all that, right? I mean,
Sure,
they
injuries
can't
would change all that. We can't
they
guess about those.
and they've
And
had enough of those that it's already made them thinner than they want to be.
sure, like we've already lost another piece of what I would consider the sustainability bucket, which would be Burrows. You know, he just went down to the Tommy John surgery as well, so you don't have him to call on now.
Yeah.
So that makes that a little bit good. So we get on. We'll move out of the pitching because that can get murky. At least the starting pitching. Let's go with Justin here. He says Marcano looks good, fellas. Thoughts? I totally agree. Marcano looks really good. What I love about Marcano is that Marcano plays the game almost the same way G1 Bay does. And if you put the two of them in a lineup together with a little bit of separation, you've got two nasty little spark plugs that can just get on base and cock everything up for the other team
Hmm.
at any given point. I absolutely love the small ball potential of having them both in the lineup. I mean, you lose a little bit in power, I think, having both of them in there. But man, do they get stuff started. And they just make a mess and all over the base paths for everybody else.
Well, yeah, I mean the Pirates are, if they're not leading baseball in steals, they're right there.
They are leading baseball in steals by a
And they
hefty
ran they
margin too.
ran roughshod over the Dodgers. I
They ran the
mean,
Dodgers right out of the stadium.
like, so credit to whoever to really take advantage of all this new stuff in baseball and turn it into a real positive for the Pirates.
Think
But we're
about the
gonna
cool looks that this manager can throw out at teams.
oh
He
yeah,
he could put out a speed unit and beat you with speed. He can put out a power unit and beat you with thump, right?
sure.
Like they could
And
do a lot of different things, and they're pretty balanced, left and right. They can hit you.
yeah, and to your point about just Bay and Mercano and what they can do is, like, we're gonna have to start. This is going to be a new era of kind of evaluating certain guys and how we view them. We're not going to be able to just rely on the last 15 years of long ball, low average type production, and
Yeah, yeah.
there's a different element and a different impact on the game that we haven't seen in a long time in baseball, and these guys used to be valued. And Gary, maybe we're starting to see that again. And we're older baseball fans. I,
Yeah.
I I I would love it. I would love to see guys like this be able to have impact on the game. It didn't used to be, baseball didn't used to be how big you were and how strong you were.
Our buddy
It
Josh pipes in here with Pirates have an MLB leading 37 stolen bases. Next is Cleveland with 31. But the Bucks have them beating home runs 30-13. So that's what I mean. The Pirates can
Yeah,
beat you multiple ways, man. Like I love it.
right. That's actually, thanks, Josh. That's actually a really that shows you the difference between one and two there.
Yeah, yeah. Josh does good stuff, and his name is his podcast name. So check him out. He's smart. All right, so we got this other dude here, Pittsburgh Sports All the Time. Welcome back, sir. How you doing? Uh, says all night. All right, all right. An even bigger surprise to me, since they called him up, is Mark Matthias. Yeah. I don't know if I knew enough about him to be surprised. I don't really think I knew what to expect from him, and I kind of left myself there with him. There was no time for me to evaluate him, and looking at a few stats doesn't really do too much. So I really kind of like to see people. Um, so I was
I kn-
surprised as well, like just with, I think he's got a little bit more contact hitter to him than I thought he did, just from the numbers I read. And I
I
like his
knew,
game.
yeah, I knew he had hit a little bit everywhere he had been. Um, and so
Look at Doug. Look at Doug going back to his youth.
Doug's never been so happier for 1980, 1970s baseball.
Oh, I'm sorry, audio people. Doug chimed in with "Dare we say lumber and lightning." I should read you all the comments instead of just assuming everyone's watching it. So, go ahead, man.
No, I just think that these types of guys are, it's great that we can be back in an era. Maybe this is a new era where these guys matter in games, and teams can try to win different ways. It's been so long ball dependent, Gary, and that hurts teams that don't have a lot of power.
Right. Let's see what. I'm just going to call you Wolf. I think a huge thing I'm seeing is staying consistent with approach at the plate. Plenty of solidly hit outs, but the players continue to swing the same way. Um, yeah and no. You know, I Andy Haynes has done a really good job. I can't say this strongly enough. And we were very difficult on him for the better part of last year. this year he's backed off on some of the rigidness, I would say. As far as the approach goes, they seem to be more open to looking at things instead of um, trying to walk all the time. They're more just looking for a ball in the zone or out of the zone. They seem to have widened the zone a little bit.
Right.
Um, and I also think the veterans are helping with that because Carlos Santana will teach a guy how he goes about in that bat pretty quick. I don't know if you ever heard him. There's a few videos on YouTube of him basically talking to younger guys about what they should be looking for and how they know when to start their swing, and he even has some tricks for how to trick the catcher into thinking you were fooled so they go back to a pitch so that he can hammer it later.
I want to see. You have to forward me that because that sounds super nerdy, and I
These
would
were
love
way
it.
back when he was with the Indians, man.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
the Guardians now. I'm sorry, but yeah, really cool stuff to watch. He's fun.
Well, to Wolf's point, I will say this is like what I love is every at bat you have to make the pitcher work. Like even if you're going to get an out, and that's going to happen in baseball, obviously. But working counts and making pitch counts higher than they need to be, giving batters longer looks at pitchers help in next at bat. And it like so the more pitches you see. So like this is a cumulative thing that I really think that they're not giving away a ton of at bats. And so that's been a big difference to me this year when I watch. Putting veterans in your lineup tends to do that, by the way.
Yeah, it does. It does. I want to get back to this question, so I want to just make sure we note it. This is a great question. We need to get back to it. From Nicholas McKee says, if we're still in contention come deadline time, is Bob betting buying?
Gary, this popped into my head today. It's funny he said that. This popped into my head. What if we're 2.5 months down the road and this is still a thing?
I thought I already wrote about this actually like a couple days ago because it started churning in my head a little bit. Somebody asked basically like, when are we trading the veterans and calling up all the young guys? And my answer kind of like just naturally got into, well, if they're playing like this, they might not.
They wouldn't.
Well, that's my point. They probably won't. You know, like they're not going to ship out Carlos Santana if they're in playoff contention. There would be nothing to gain. It would be really stupid.
Yeah. There's nothing big enough to gain from that at this point for them.
Right.
You know, you would want to try to see it through. Now, I think
let's be really blunt though. There's something to be gained. They could get good players back. But I think what we're talking about basically is we're in a different stage now. You're no longer into that point where you're trying to accumulate that just because you have to get something in your system.
You might get a talented you might get a talented young guy out of it.
Yeah.
But at this point the trade-off is you're going to take yourself out of surprisingly contending. I don't think you would do that. They don't need to do that now.
Now let's try to actually address the question. Would they actually spend some money? Yeah, probably. Probably.
That's the really interesting aspect to me is like because now, you know, they've committed to Reynolds. Big bad Bob Nutting says they're not done there. But they can't change too much of what they want to do long term just because they were surprisingly in contention this year.
Well, my only thing about if you were going to go for it at the deadline and add something, this is way off in the future stuff. We'll actually do a show on this if it matters later. But like,
let's hope we can do it again.
But let's just say that it does make it and it matters.
I know exactly where you're going. By the way, before you go there.
you'd want it to be something that took you beyond just that year.
You could
You're not
roll it
looking for
in. You can
you're not looking
roll it
for like
in.
a starter that comes in and gets you 6 weeks of baseball in the playoffs. You're not at that stage anymore. You still want to be good for 3-4 years here. You're going to
You want to
have to
add.
eventually fill that sort of role anyway, probably via free agency. So you want to find something a little bit meat on the bones. You're probably going to look to pillage the A's, or this isn't like we want showy for the playoff run. You
Right.
know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This isn't just that short-term rental. The guy's not staying. Um, I mean, could they do that with like a real small piece? Yes, but we're talking about anything noticeable. You'd want to roll it into what you're still already doing.
yeah. I mean, I'd
And
also say look at them right now. Uh, Bullpen, you might want some fortification, like in the sixth and seventh inning, somewhere in there. And aside from that, and I'd probably get a good long man lefty. Like I want Brett Suter. I think I've made that pretty clear. But I don't know. Are you going to go get an outfielder? Why? Well, where who's he better than?
yeah,
You're going to play. You want to play Jack. I guess you could say he'd be better than Joe, but not if he's playing like this. And then you got this Kutch guy that could go out there if you really needed to.
yeah.
Um,
I think bullpen is where you look at and go, okay, if Gary, if I see a place where this ties into a little bit of the regression, maybe is like still a little worried about the thinness of the bullpen. Um, but yes, they could go out at the trade deadline, get a guy, maybe a lefty, maybe a long relief guy that they could still use that has some control left to him. That
and
would
I
be
will,
that would be ideal.
and again, we have the benefit of this being really, really long before we actually get to it. But you know, Cody Bolton just got called up. I think you're going to really like him.
That's
I think
true.
he's going to start to prove to you that I'm not crazy about the depth of the bullpen, because they have a lot more than you think. They really do. Like we haven't even talked about Yeri in a very long time, right? We've
No,
got
they
Colin Selby down there. Carmen Majinski's throwing. Bolton looks really good. Like good enough that like I think they kind of forced this call up. I don't believe Crow's actually injured, but
yeah, I wondered that. I think where we're deviating from is like I look at it as like they've got these guys. I'm talking like maybe someone a little more established and proven instead of if you're at that point getting someone that's already kind of done it or has started to do it at the major league level. Not saying any of those guys can't work out.
yeah, I think that's where I'm at too, Jim. It to me though, I mean, I got to get closer to the deadline to really know what they'd need. I
Yeah.
just don't know what that would be. Let's say like Ortiz is already in the rotation and you feel like it's 4 strong, 5 strong even. And maybe Vince is already in the bullpen and he's answered a couple questions there that we have about the bullpen. It's really difficult for me to sit here and say, yeah, they'll need this, they'll need that. But I do feel pretty good saying I think that they would definitely heel turn here. Just like I
I
think they'd heel turn about trading any of these guys. I mean, I could see them like moving Choi, just because they kind of haven't really needed him, and then he got hurt, and then probably still don't need him when he gets back. But
yeah.
he was hitting too, so
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
think I'd be shocked if I don't think they would if they're in it they would. This is a fun conversation to have because we have to suspend some um,
Yeah,
reality right now. We just don't know, but it's a fun conversation to have. I don't think that they would trade anybody off. I think that they would add, and I think it would be a smart add that doesn't alter what they're already planning to do and how they're trying to do it.
yeah,
That would be ideal. Go out, find someone with 3 4 years of control, maybe a really good maybe a really good bullpen guy and just fold that right into what you're doing.
Yeah, it's definitely cool, man. Let's take a quick break. For those of you on video, it's just gonna be us sitting here. Audio, real break. All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Jim and Gary with you. Man, we're having an upbeat and fun conversation about the Pirates. We're even dreaming about trade deadline deals. It's been a very long time since instead of talking about where our players were going, we're talking about which of our players would have to move aside to make room for other players. So, very difficult, my friend, to actually even
Hey,
have those conversations make sense sometimes, right?
we're through April for the most part. May and June, boy, things could get really interesting here in the next month or two.
Here's one for you to read, Jim. John Gorman says every day your selections for the Jaggies get more and more validated. They earn their spots well. If you don't know about the Jaggies, follow Jim on Twitter. You'll learn. Pretty great.
If you need a refresher, I'll DM you some stuff. But it is an awards show to the top 10 worst Twitter accounts in Pittsburgh. And yeah, John, listen, buddy, these people make it easy. It's it's not something that I have to go looking for. They make it easy and they earn it. They really do.
Hey, here's a question from Ryan Little. How do you still have the Pirates ranked 14th in power ranking? Now, obviously, he doesn't mean you as in us. He means the royal you, the idiots, the ESPNs, the whatever is ranking, whatever, right? Um, I don't know. Maybe whoever ranks baseball teams properly was one of the multitude of layoffs from Disney ESPN. But I think this, I can call back to the Pitt basketball season for this answer, probably. When you start out with really, really low expectations, it's going to take a minute for everybody to really believe that you have done something, you know, and you are for real. We can talk about it. We're watching it every day. These people aren't. They're watching highlights. They're seeing home runs from guys that aren't supposed to be hitting all these home runs. They're seeing stolen bases from all these guys they never heard of. They're seeing good baseball from people that are supposed to stink or be too old to play anymore. Or, you know, McCutcheon's supposed to be icing his knees. He's supposed to be, the catcher character from Major League after running at first base every time now. And
Jake,
yeah,
whatever his name was.
Jake Taylor. There you go.
Jake Taylor, yeah.
So, I think it just takes a minute for people to kind of come around to that stuff being real. Like Pitt, it took them most of the year to kind of convince people that they were a real thing.
Rankings are like polls. Like there's built-in bias. You've got to prove it. I got news for you. The Pirates could win this year more than they're supposed to lose, and when the power rankings come back out next year, they're probably not going to be very. You're probably not going to see them being in the top 10 or 15, just because they're going to make you wait, and they're not paying attention. You said that too, Gary. They're not.
Yeah. So we had the big news was the Reynolds extension, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a lot of positive things, but to have all of that positivity before we even get to Reynolds, I mean, some things are going right. So the Pirates did what, I think that we hoped they would do all along. And they weren't afraid. They signed him for 8 years, $106 million. No complaints. First, it's a record deal for the Pirates. Thank you. Brian seems happy. Bob Nutting was instrumental in it. And I want my flowers, Jim. I've been on this the whole freaking time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you were, Gary, and I think it just is a reminder sometimes of just like how long some of this stuff takes to play out sometimes. Like, this is not, it's money, man, and it's long-term money, and feelings get hurt, and
Yeah.
teams and players come to the table, they walk away. So I'll tell you what, Twitter shut up pretty hard because it was impossible to argue that it wasn't a great deal for the Pirates.
That was a
You know,
terrific deal.
like, and hey, Brian Reynolds, no one like, they're happy with it. So
Yeah, I
you
mean, I've
know,
got sources on both sides of this, so I mean, like, I know there were tenuous moments, at least to the public, but I mean, the principals were always committed to getting this done. And there's something in the press conference, Ben Charrington kept saying like this really only happened because of Brian, and we're here because of Brian. And you hear that stuff in a press conference a lot, and you kind of think, Brian Reynolds more than anybody made this deal happen. He wanted it. He dropped his ask. He kept forcing everybody, including his agents that wanted him to stop talking to the Pirates, back to the table. When Ben didn't want to talk about it anymore, he kept forcing them back to the table.
yeah,
Bob Nutting wanted it to happen and basically kept telling Ben, yes, get your butt back to the table. And they just kept working on it until they got it done. None of that happens if Brian Reynolds doesn't do it. So when he goes over for 4 in May, one game, lay off. The
yeah.
dude wants to be here.
That's the big thing now, is like, we love to kind of hold athletes to a standard that's probably not realistic, in the sense of, they're in it for the money, they're in it for yes, but Pittsburgh has had some of this recently now with Sidney Crosby and
Yep.
Gino and Letang and Reynolds now, and these, even probably Hayes at some point. Like, these are guys that want to stay, and they're taking a little bit less to do it. I think that's a good reflection on the city itself too, quite honestly.
Yeah, I think it certainly is. I really do. And we also, as Pirate fans, we do this like Toddy does, our friend here. Does Cruz get an extension? Go Bucks! And as soon as the Reynolds ink was dry, I knew my friend Jim Stam was going to jump on Twitter and immediately demand Keller get signed.
I gave it 24 hours, Gary. That's called maturity,
Right.
on my part.
Right. Well, he probably didn't want to get into another Twitter spat with me telling him to be happy for 10 minutes. But
see, that's growth. It's growth.
No, but the truth is, she's not wrong to bring that up, because Bob himself said they're not done. And just getting started in many ways, he said. And I know, the jokes are going to fly around. I don't think he's ever going to be a popular character here. But I do feel that it's important that people understand how very much so he helped make this process happen with Reynolds. So, in fact, the reason it happened when it just did was because Bob called a meeting with Brian and said, "Let's get this done."
Right.
So, I think it's hard. And McCutcheon reached out to who to come back here?
Bob Mr. Nutting. Yep.
All I'm saying is he's cheap. We get it. But right now, he looks like he's trying to do something here. Let's at least let it go for a minute and see where it goes. Now, does he get Cruz done? I don't know. I've said before, Jim, I didn't think Cruz was doable. But, maybe. Maybe while he's sitting around watching what's going on with his team, not able to contribute, maybe it's a good time to sit down and talk to him. Mitch Keller, to me, is much more of a priority. They've only got 2 years left with him.
Yeah.
And he's in the exact same situation Brian Reynolds was in. 2 years left. Go get Keller done. Is the guy I'd go after.
Keller is getting more expensive by the day. he could be in for a very, very large payday on the free agent market when that time comes. We know how coveted pitchers are, especially guys that are top of the rotation type guys. So that would be my priority. I think if anything, I don't want to call this a silver lining because he got hurt, but it gives them a little more time with the Cruz situation, and maybe like you said something there, Gary, that is I wonder, do they ever think a long-term deal with Cruz is possible? Would would you be wise to lock up everything around him and just go with these years of control with him and pay everyone around him? I think it's a valid question
I don't know. Um,
because it's a lot of money to start throwing around to him and then Keller. Um,
Again, I think I'd start with Keller, and here's where we start getting into like picking apart what these guys are saying and trying to guess what they're thinking. Okay, when they talk about wanting to have guys here who are good leaders and good people, and they act a certain way, and they get involved in this and that. Mitch Keller is that guy. I'm
yeah,
just gonna say. And Mitch Keller wants to be here and wants to be the best pitcher here. He wants to lead a staff. Um, when you get an ace that you develop and you work that hard to develop, to me, you have to lock him up.
yeah.
Now,
And
I think
someone,
starting pitchers, you do got to be a little bit scared. You can't be going 8 years with a guy like that. But I think you can get him 5, 6.
yeah. So, and someone brought up a good point. I think it might have even been our buddy York today. Said that like,
Well, if it was a good point, that's impossible.
well, yeah, maybe he blacked out for a second, but we're kidding, York. We're kidding.
Yes.
No, he said that hey, Keller would probably like some security now too. You know, you're one bad Tommy John away from him at this point of his career at his age of not having that kind of security. So there would be some inclination on both sides, I would think, to want to get a deal done.
I would think so too, and I actually think that there's a good chance they'll get him done.
I
I really do.
I feel hopeful about that. And let me just tack on one more thing about the guys we've been talking about, whether it's Reynolds or Keller. They've got a collection of guys like that: Keller, Hayes, Reynolds. I really do think they value being in a market like Pittsburgh. I do think that
Yes.
their personalities really align with that. And so they don't want to go to play in some of these other markets. They are comfortable here and comfortable in a good way. And
Yeah.
I think that plays a part in this, Gary. It really does.
No, I don't think you're wrong, Jim. I think there's something to be said for that, and I think there's a reason that Andrew McCutcheon speaks to them so well. You know, um, I think it's been good having him around for that sort of thing as well.
Not to mention he's still killing the ball.
Yeah, but I would also just caution everybody. We sit here, we look at things like this, and we're looking at this team and the way they're performing right now, and you get really excited, and everybody starts immediately thinking they can Atlanta Braves this thing and just start extending everybody and have this monster core wrapped up forever. We don't even have one of Ben Charrington's draft picks here yet. Just think about that.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because, and I don't say that so that you don't think about, you know, um, getting Cruz, and I don't say that so that you don't think about um, grabbing a guy like Keller and locking him up or anybody. I say that because as you continue to add to your list, because Rodolfo Castro is going to hit that list at some point if he keeps playing like this. Jack Sawinski is going to be a guy you bring up if he hits 25, 30 home runs this year. You're going to start wanting to lock all these guys up. That's totally natural. I get it. Rowan Z is going to be brought up. Oviedo.
Rohanzi for sure.
Think about it. But you've got Endy coming up. You got Henry coming up. You got Nick Gonzalez, maybe.
Well,
Quinn
that
Priester.
yeah, and you can't sign everybody, no matter who you are. So
Point is, you just got to be thinking about that a little bit down the road, just to make sure that that's really what you want to do.
mhm.
Because it's not as simple as just saying like, well, Rodolfo Castro's awesome. He can hit 25 home runs. He's a switch hitter and he can play here and here. Cool. So's this other dude that you got coming up, and at some point you have to decide somebody can come up.
Right, and that's ideally what markets like Pittsburgh are looking to do, is like
Yeah.
have the next guy ready to go, so you're not having to pay some crazy amount to a lot of guys. You have
Yeah.
to pick and choose, Gary,
Well,
and
so
that's
the real side to that, the real conversation there is just okay, well, maybe just realize there's going to be some guys we have to say no to. And it may not be because nutting is cheap. It may be because we don't think that helps us construct this team.
yeah,
There may be some decisions like that that have to be made. Like Connor Joe, for instance. He's already like he's going to be hitting arbitration next year, so you got 3 more years of him. You're not going to extend Connor Joe. Like there's
no,
but there will be people, if he hits like this, there will be people that say we should. Just think
well,
about it.
yeah, because the fans don't have to worry about that
Yeah.
stuff, right?
So
So
all I'm saying is like, hey, let's maybe like table it on some guys. Let's get the guys we know we're worried about losing, like Keller, out of the way. You do something like that. Okay, now you've got a real nice core there. Let's
right,
talk about what's next. Do you go
yeah,
ahead
and
and
then
get his backing pitcher like Rawanzi, or do you bounce back over to the offense and tackle Cruz or something?
yeah, and Cruz, there's still a lot of time left there. I know it's dangerous to keep it going too long, but you've got to make a decision on if you want to build around him and pay people or pay him. That'll be an interesting conversation we're probably going to be having.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Really cool to watch everything going on. We should talk about Mr. Grote a little bit. Um,
Yeah, man,
you
I
know,
got super, not sad, but just, oh man, when I saw the news that he
yeah,
passed this morning, I was just like, oh man, another. It sucks to lose like icons, and he was an icon.
I wish he had made it until he got to at least see the Hall of Fame plaque go
Yeah,
up. But
but at
yeah,
least he knew that
he
he
did.
was inducted, and I'm glad for that.
Me too. But as a Pitt fan, as a Pirate fan, you know, um, as just a sports fan in general, uh, Dick Grote, arguably the greatest athlete to ever come out of Western Pennsylvania, just as far as what he has accomplished in his life. And he never lost sight of his roots like most Pittsburghers don't. And
Yeah,
yeah, just good guy.
92,
I've been
92 is a good full
92.
life. Sounds like he lived as full of a life as you could possibly live.
I mean, as a veteran too,
Yeah,
like there's just the accomplishments just go on and on. I was fortunate enough to meet the man a few times, and just a wonderful, wonderful person, and two-time world champion. You know, one-time MVP.
yeah.
What are you
Pittsburgh.
gonna say?
It hurts in Pittsburgh when we lose guys like that. I think it hurts here a little more. And but man, he was a great athlete, a great person, and I'm glad he got to know that the Hall of Fame for the Pirates was something he was going to be in.
Yeah. So let's finish on the upswing, huh? Because here we are. We're looking ahead in the schedule. We've got Washington, and I don't want to look past them, and I wouldn't tell the team to look past them. They're looking one game at a time. Let's get all that placating crap out of the way.
110%, Gary. That's what we need from them.
Yeah, because we're going to look right past them. as we finish this conversation, because normally, like, your number one team in the NL, now you're going to face the number one team in all of baseball right now, Tampa Bay Rays, right after this national series. And I got to be honest, Jim, I'm looking forward to this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of it. I want it. I want it.
Well, same as I was looking forward to the Dodgers series simply because like I want to start measuring. You gotta start measuring yourself against the better teams on that are at least on
Yeah,
paper, and the Dodgers still are supposed to be a better team. So, um, yeah, I think it's at Tampa. It's a nice way to kind of size up where you're at.
yeah. I
And if they
think.
go in there and they lose three close games, yeah, it'd be disappointing, but it's still something you could take from it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that they can challenge them. I mean, the Rays, they're a good team. They win. They certainly play great baseball, but they're not unbeatable.
No,
I mean, I think that the Pirates stack up well against them, and I actually think part of the reason that the Rays win is because they have been doing a lot of things the Pirates do.
very, very similar. They've actually had a more favorable schedule than, I mean, people were kind of dogging on the Pirates for that, but the Rays did too. So, I'm not taking anything away from them. I'm just saying, like, they they were benefiting by also cleaning up against a lot of lessers. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. Back to your original point with Gary is it's just fun to go into series like that and not be afraid you're playing the Yankees and you're just going to get stomped.
It's pretty awesome, and it's Jim Morrison time here with all the strange days stuff going on. In Pittsburgh sports, the whole thing's flipped on its side. We got the draft coming up tonight. If you're watching live with us, we'll see who's going to be the next Pittsburgh Steeler. I'm kind of
There'll be
excited
a
about
lot
that
of
as well.
there'll be a lot of sane takes about that, I'm sure.
Oh,
And
absolutely, absolutely. And then there'll be people pulling out like their crumpled pieces of paper to talk about their
who they nailed the fourth round pick in their mock draft.
yeah, they'll be like, this was my fourth mock draft that I did back in September of 2019. I
Yeah.
knew this kid was going to turn out, and it'll be
It's
awesome.
it's just funny that like Pirates Twitter and social media is the happy place right now. If that doesn't tell you how things have been turned on its head in Pittsburgh right now. No Penguins in the playoffs. Pirates are rolling. People are pretty happy. Chaos tonight for the Steelers on Twitter. It's
Yeah,
pirate nirvana right now, Gary.
and I'll also say, man, like there's been something we want to talk about next week, probably a little bit, is the attendance, because I've seen people kind of get on them already about like oh, well, where's the attendance? Well, it's April. It's cold. It's skulls in. Like, let's calm down a little bit. But even so, the fans that are coming out, it's better numbers than normal for April, and they
And they're
are
really into it.
loud and they are smart.
Yeah.
Like, they know what they're talking about. The reception that Maggi got, for that pinch hit. These are fans that get it. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
The chance for Joe that started up sporadically. Joe's not a guy that gets that kind of reception.
This is what starts familiarizing players with fans and vice versa, and you get to know names. Like I said, 2 years ago we were at the Pirate game. It was O'Neill Cruz's debut, and the guy sitting next to me had no idea. That would not be the case right now with just this little bit of a hot start.
I'll never forget it. The kid leans over. He goes, "Who's that tall kid?"
Yeah.
You should have seen Jim's face. He sits back. He's
I
got
have
this.
to,
He's
and I
got
had to
this fresh
answer.
mango. He hadn't even taken a sip out of it yet. He just looks over at me. He's like, cracks the knuckles, cracks the neck a little bit, takes a big swig. He goes, "Let me tell you something, son."
I tried not to scare him too much, but
Oh, it was great.
yeah, but no, that wouldn't happen this year. I really don't think so. I think people that tells you people are more in tune and invested. It's cool to see.
I'd agree with you. That said, man, we got to get out of here. We
Fine.
have to. It's been about an hour. So,
Yeah, but it's been fun, dude.
I know, but everybody's got to get ready for the draft. So let's get
That's
out of
right.
here.
All right.
Let's let Ben take it away. Thanks, everybody. This was great. And the chat's really cool, too. We keep that coming. Really love the participation today. Give us a subscription, follow, do the like stuff, all that stuff. Thank you very much. Everybody, Ben, take it away.